Greetings, esteemed story seeker, as we embark on the voyage of Entropic Flesh, crafted with the finesse and imagination of StoryWave.ai. Join our circle by liking, sharing, and subscribing for daily adventure delights. Chapter 1: The Slow Descent. I'd never been one for the morning news, but today it blared from every screen, every radio, and every pair of lips on the street. The Earth itself, in an act of cosmic defiance, was slowing down, its rotation decelerating with no apparent cause. I stood in the doorway of our small desert home, coffee in hand, a furrow deepening on my brow as I watched the sun crawl up the horizon with a lazy arrogance. "Rob, have you seen this?" Melania's voice, usually so soothing, carried an edge of concern that morning. She stood in the midst of her makeshift greenhouse, a sanctuary of green in a world turning to rust. "Yeah, Lonnie, it's all over the news," I called back, my gaze still fixed on the sluggish sunrise. "They're saying it could just be a minor fluctuation, nothing to worry about." Her silhouette moved with purpose as she tended to her plants, her hands deftly navigating the stems and leaves. "It's not just the news. Rob, look at these," she said, her tone demanding my attention. I stepped into the humid embrace of the greenhouse, peering over her shoulder. The plants, usually so predictable in their growth, had adopted new, spiraling patterns. "That's odd," I admitted. Outside, the world had taken on an eerie stillness. The birds, once a furor of morning chatter, were silent, their absence like the quiet before a storm. It was a silence that crept under my skin, that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. "Rob, the wildlife." Melania's voice trailed off as we both noticed the exodus. Animals in droves were migrating, a mass pilgrimage across the scorched plains, driven by an instinctual alarm that humans seemed deaf to. I watched, a silent sentinel, as the creatures fled. "They know something we don't," I muttered, more to myself than to Melania. She nodded, her hazel eyes reflecting the chaos of nature's upheaval. "And the plants, they're reacting to something. It's as if they can feel the earth's heartbeat slowing." I turned to her, my deep voice steady, even as doubt gnawed at me. "We need to get to the bottom of this, Lonnie. If the earth's rhythm is changing, it could mean disaster," she finished for me, her gaze locked with mine. "Global catastrophe, Rob, and no one's prepared for it." I ran a hand through my brown hair, the weight of the situation settling on my shoulders like a mantle. "We need to start preparing, stockpile food, water, gather supplies. If things escalate, we'll be ready," Melania interjected, her voice laced with the steel of resolve. "We'll survive this, Rob, together." As we set about our tasks, the sun continued its sluggish arc across the sky, a tangible sign of the world's slow descent into chaos. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, that the earth's languid dance was a presage of darker days to come. But amidst the uncertainty, one thing was clear. Melania and I would face whatever lay ahead as one, our bond unbroken by the shifting sands of a world teetering on the brink of the unknown. Chapter 2: The World Stands Still. "Rob, look at the streetlights," she whispered, her voice barely rising above the hush that had befallen our city. I followed her gaze to the flickering lights, their luminance sputtering like the final beats of a dying heart before surrendering to darkness. I steadied my breath, the air tasting of dust and fear. "The power grids are down," I said, stating the obvious. Melania nodded, her hands clasped tightly around the rifle she had learned to wield with unsettling proficiency. "And they won't be coming back on." It wasn't a question. We both knew the implications. Without power, without the spin of the earth to separate day from night, chaos would unfold like a cruel shuffle. We had seen it begin, the unraveling of civility as desperation took root. Neighbors turned on each other, store shelves stripped bare, water, once a given, now a precious commodity. The world had not simply paused, it had regressed into a primal state of survival. And then there were the others, the ones who had succumbed to the virus rampaging through the streets. The undead, as we had taken to calling them, with a mix of horror and disbelief. "Lonnie, we can't stay here," I said, my eyes scanning the broken skyline. "It's only a matter of time before they breach the barricades." She met my gaze, the setting sun casting her features in sharp relief. "We need to find a safe place, somewhere remote. The desert, maybe. Somewhere they won't follow." I considered this, the weight of her words heavy in my chest. "We'll need supplies, food, water, ammo. We'll have to move fast." Every moment we waste is a moment they gain on us, she interrupted, a sense of urgency lacing her words. The sun, stubborn in its refusal to dip below the horizon, cast long shadows across the abandoned streets. We had witnessed the first wave of the undead horde just days prior, a mass of stumbling figures, their humanity stripped away by the virus's insatiable hunger. I still remembered the faces of those we had lost, contorted by the virus's cruel hand. Friends, family, all gone in the blink of an eye. The memory fueled my resolve. Let's gather what we can and leave at first light, I proposed, my hand finding hers in the dimming light. We'll head east, put as much distance between us and the city as possible. Melania squeezed my hand in affirmation, her determination a beamer in the encroaching twilight. We'll make it, Rob. We have to. As darkness claimed the world, our plans solidified into a grim checklist of survival. We would leave behind the remnants of a society that had crumbled beneath the weight of its own hubris, venturing into the unknown with nothing but each other and the will to endure. The world may have stood still, but we would not. We would push forward, carving out a semblance of life in a world that had all but forgotten the meaning of the word. Chapter 3: Dark Reversal. Rob, with his military-bred precision, had become the pillar I didn't know I needed. Lanny, he said, his voice a sure thing in a sea of uncertainty, we need to make sense of this, fast. I nodded, my gaze fixed on the skyline where the reverse spin threw shadows in the wrong direction, casting the city in an otherworldly pall. It's as if the planet itself is rejecting us, spitting us out like a bad taste, I replied. A crackle of static interrupted our contemplation as we listened to the emergency broadcast sputter its last breath, a voice of authority giving way to an ominous silence. It was the sound of our last semblance of order dissolving into the air. The government, I struggled to find the words, the concept of a world without structure, a jagged pill to swallow. Gone, Lonnie. It's gone, Rob filled in, his green eyes reflecting a resoluteness born of necessity. We watched as lights blinked out across the city, the power grid failing in symphony with the old world's rules. It was then that the first of the undead made their presence known. A shuffling figure emerged from the shadow of an alley. Once a man, now a hollowed shell, hunger etched into its every step. Rob, they're here, I whispered, the reality of our new normal settling like ash on my tongue. He nodded, lifting his rifle in a fluid motion that spoke volumes of his past life. We need to help the others, fortify their homes. It's not just about us anymore. Together we moved quickly, knocking on doors, offering what aid we could. The Johnsons, an elderly couple, welcomed our help with a barricade of furniture against their front door. Next door, the Martins, a family of 4, followed suit, their faces etched with the same fear that had taken up residence in my own heart. You're doing good, Lonnie, Rob assured me as we hammered planks over windows, his hands steady as ever. I didn't feel good. I felt like a drop in an ocean of chaos, but his words were a lifeline I clung to with everything I had. We have to keep moving, Rob. If we stop, I know, he said, cutting me off with a firm nod. We worked through the night, our efforts a patchwork of hope against the relentless tide of the undead. Every hammer stroke was a declaration, every nailed plank a silent scream into the void that had swallowed our world. As dawn broke over a city that no longer knew the meaning of daybreak, we stood back to survey our handiwork. It was a fortress of desperation, a monument to mankind's stubborn refusal to go quietly. We'll get through this, Rob said, his voice carrying the weight of command. We have to understand what's happening, why the earth decided to turn its back on us. And then, I asked, my voice a mere whisper against the dissonance of a world undone. Then we fight, Lanny. We fight to rebuild, to find answers, to reclaim a semblance of the life that was torn from our grasp. His words were a clarion call, a summons to the deepest part of me that still believed in a future. And as the first light of a backward-spinning sun crept over the horizon, I knew we would stand together, united against the entropy that threatened to consume us. Chapter 4: The Vanishing. Eddie's gone, a voice crackled over the makeshift radio, the signal weak but threaded with panic. It was Mike, Eddie's brother, his words tumbling out in a frantic cascade. He was here last night, and now there's nothing, no sign of him, not a trace. I clutched the radio, fingers pressing into the plastic as if I could squeeze out more information. Mike, tell me exactly what happened, I urged, my voice measured despite the turmoil churning within. Melania stood by, her eyes sharp and searching, etching every detail into the canvas of her mind. Could the undead have gotten to him? She inquired, her tone devoid of fear, replaced instead with the clinical detachment of a scientist observing an experiment gone awry. Mike's reply was laced with distress. No, Rob, it's not like that. He was sleeping right next to me. We had the place secure. No way one of those things could have gotten in without a ruckus. He's just gone. The air hung heavy with the implications of his words. Disappearances like this were becoming more common, whispers of people slipping into the void as seamlessly as shadows at dusk. We'll come to you. Stay put and keep your eyes open, I told Mike, signaling to Melania that we needed to move out. As we navigated the treacherous cityscape, the desolation was palpable. Buildings stood like the hollowed husks of a forgotten civilization, the silence punctuated only by the occasional distant groan of the undead or the crunch of debris beneath our boots. We need to keep the survivors together, Rob, Melania insisted, as we made our way through what once was a vibrant neighborhood. If we're turning on each other, picking off the weakest, we're no better than the undead. I nodded, the gravity of our situation settling upon me. Agreed. But how can we preach unity when people are being plucked from existence like dandelions in the wind? We arrived at Mike's holdout, a fortified apartment complex that had become a small bastion for a handful of survivors. Mike greeted us, his face drawn and pale, the ghost of his brother haunting his expression. Together, we scoured the room where Eddie had last been seen. It was untouched, the bed Eddie had occupied neatly made, as though it had never been slept in at all. This doesn't make sense, I murmured, running a hand along the wall, half expecting it to give way to some hidden compartment. Melania crouched by the bed, her botanist's eyes scanning for the minutiae that might have evaded others. There's no sign of a struggle, no blood, no disturbance. It's as if the earth itself swallowed him whole. Mike slumped against the wall, the burden of the unknown heavy on his shoulders. What are we going to do, Rob? How do we fight against something we can't see, can't understand? We stick together, I affirmed, meeting his gaze. We fortify, we watch each other's backs, and we keep searching for answers. Melania rose to her feet, her endurance a tangible thing that seemed to fill the room. And we don't give in to fear. Whatever's happening, we face it as one. We are the remnants of humanity, and we will not go quietly. Her words were a rallying cry, a signpost of hope in the ever-deepening twilight. As we joined hands, a pact unspoken, I knew that our journey was far from over. The vanishing of our own kind had added a new layer to the mystery, a new adversary in the silent war we waged against the entropy of our world. And together, we would search for the light in the darkness, for the truth that lay hidden beneath the veil of the vanishing. Chapter 5. Echoes of Truth. Lonnie, I called, my voice bouncing off the walls. I found something. Melania, her black hair tied back in a no-nonsense bun, appeared from around the corner, her rifle slung across her shoulder. Her eyes, usually a calm pool of hazel, were alight with the sharp edge of urgency. "What is it, Rob?" she asked, her voice betraying a sliver of hope amidst the prevailing despair. In here, I motioned towards an office at the end of the hall, its door ajar. Inside, the remnants of hurried evacuation were evident. Papers strewn across the floor, a coffee mug lay shattered in the corner, and the soft, blinking light of a computer still alive with power. We approached the terminal, the screen awash with rows of encrypted files, each a potential key to the enigma that had upended the Earth. My fingers danced across the keyboard, my past life as an engineer sparking to life, confronting the riddle laid out before us. Melania watched over my shoulder, her presence a silent support. "Can you break through the encryption?" she questioned, her voice steady. I nodded, focused. "I think so. It's complex, but not impenetrable. It looks like it was put together in a hurry, probably as things started to fall apart. Minutes or hours could have passed. Time had become a malleable concept since the world stood still, but finally the screen flickered, and a cascade of files unfolded before us like a digital Pandora's box. "Look at this," I said, my voice a mix of triumph and trepidation. "These are project logs. They were experimenting with something, gravitational field manipulation, trying to generate energy." Melania leaned in, her botanist's mind dissecting the information. Could that have caused the rotation anomaly? It's possible, I murmured, the weight of the revelation settling upon us. If they lost control, it could have caused a chain reaction, the slowdown, the reversal, even the virus. The sound of our collective realization was drowned out by a sudden clamor at the door. We turned to see a squad of soldiers, the last vestiges of military authority, their faces obscured by masks, guns drawn. "Drop your weapons," the leader commanded, his voice muffled but authoritative. We complied, our hands raised in a gesture of surrender that felt all too familiar in a world where every day was a negotiation for survival. "You don't understand," I began, trying to bridge the gap between desperation and reason. "We found something that could explain everything." The soldier's gaze didn't waver, his finger resting on the trigger with a casual menace. "That information is classified. You're coming with us." Melania's eyes met mine, a silent conversation passing between us. We had uncovered a truth that was as dangerous as any undead creature stalking the streets. As we were escorted from the room, the encrypted files on the screen slowly began to disappear, a digital echo of the truth vanishing before our eyes. The facility, once a radar of government authority and order, now stood as a tomb to the secrets it housed. The world outside, with its reversed spin and relentless undead, was a stark reminder of the cost of human hubris. But within me, the engineer, the soldier, the survivor, stirred a steadiness to bring the echoes of truth to light, no matter the cost. Chapter 6: Clash of Wills. As we moved stealthily past a barricade of tangled cars and barbed wire, the sharp report of a rifle shattered the stillness. We ducked behind the crumbling wall of a nearby building, the pockmarks of bullets telling tales of previous encounters. "Rob, we can't keep ducking these confrontations," Melania said, her voice low and even. She peered around the corner, her sharp gaze assessing our next move. I nodded, knowing full well that our search for answers had thrust us into the crosshairs of a new enemy. "We need to get through them, Lonnie. The answers we're looking for are on the other side." A voice boomed from a loudspeaker, the words distorted by static but the threat unmistakable. "This is our territory. Leave now, or we open fire." I reached into my pocket, feeling the cold metal of the USB drive containing the encrypted files we had risked everything to obtain, the key to understanding the cataclysmic events that had led us here. Melania caught my determined look and gave a small nod. "We need to reason with them, Rob. Show them we're not the enemy." Taking a deep breath, I called out, "We're not here to fight. We have information, vital information about the disasters." A figure appeared atop a nearby building, a silhouette against the harsh light, rifle in hand. "Why should we believe you?" the figure challenged. "We've been to the government facility. We've seen the experiments, the attempts to manipulate gravity. We think it's what's caused all this. The rotation stopping, the virus," I explained, each word measured, deliberate. The figure hesitated, and for a moment the possibility of parley seemed within reach. "And what do you want from us?" they asked, the rifle's barrel glinting in the sunlight. "We want to share what we know, work together to survive this," Melania interjected. Her voice was a calm contrast to the tension that hung between us. A murmur of voices carried over the barricade, a racket of suspicion and intrigue. The figure lowered their rifle slightly and gestured for us to approach. As we navigated the debris-littered streets, the air was thick with the stench of decay and the unspoken fears of those who had taken refuge in the ruins of civilization. We reached a clearing where the survivalists had established their stronghold, a fortress of desperation amidst the anarchy. Their leader, a man with a scar traversing the length of his cheek, met us with a wary stance. "You've got guts coming here." "Speak your piece," he said, his eyes never leaving the rifle slung across Melania's back. "We believe the government's experiments with gravitational fields have backfired, affecting the Earth's rotation and possibly unleashing the virus." "We have evidence," I replied, my words deliberate, hoping logic would prevail over the lawlessness. The leader's eyes narrowed, skepticism etched into the lines of his face. "Show me," he demanded. I handed over the USB drive, watching as one of their techs plugged it into a battered laptop, the screen flickering to life. As the files loaded, revealing the extent of the government's tampering with the natural order, a collective gasp rose from the survivalists. The The truth was undeniable, and with it came a shift in the air, a shared understanding that our fates were inexorably linked. The leader stepped forward, extending a hand still grimy from the fight for survival. "We need to work together," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "You've got a plan?" "We need to get this information out, find a way to reverse the damage if that's even possible," I answered, shaking his hand with a firm grip. Melania looked on, her expression steely but hopeful. "And we need to do it while keeping the undead at bay. We can't afford to lose focus on the threat they pose." An intense skirmish had led us to this tenuous alliance, revealing further clues to the societal collapse. But as we stood among the survivalists, the echo of truth reverberating through the ruins, I felt the stirrings of a plan forming. Together, we would clash against the darkness, armed with newfound knowledge and a will to reclaim the remnants of a world on the brink. Chapter 7, Unveiling Shadows. "We're close, aren't we, Rob?" Her voice cut through the silence like a knife, sharp and precise. I nodded, not taking my eyes off the screen. These files are the last pieces of the puzzle. If we can just... The code on the screen was a twisted labyrinth, but piece by piece the pathway became clear. I could almost feel the architects of this digital maze, their hubris bleeding through every line of obfuscated data. Melania paced, her boots echoing in the chamber. "The undead, they've been changing, adapting. Whatever this experiment unleashed, it's altering them, making them more robust to the heat." I paused, the gravity of her words sinking in. "We need this information, Lonnie. It's not just about survival anymore, it's about understanding, maybe even reversing what's been done." A clatter from the terminal heralded the breakthrough, lines of text scrolled before us, unraveling the tightly wound secrets of a global catastrophe. My eyes scanned the revelations, each sentence a further descent into the abyss of human folly. "Listen to this," I said, my voice a hoarse whisper. "Project Entropic Flesh, an initiative to harness the Earth's rotational energy as a means to offset the impending energy crisis." But the experiment failed, catastrophically. The planet's rotation, they disrupted it, trying to draw power from the core. Melania's breath caught in her throat. "They played with the foundation of our world and lost." The files detailed more than just the experiment. They spoke of contingencies, plans laid in shadow. But before I could delve deeper, a distant rumble shook the facility. "They're here," Melania stated, her tone somber. "The undead. They've found us. We had prepared for this, our escape route, a narrow passage through the bowels of the facility." As we navigated the dimly lit corridors, the groans of the undead grew louder, a clamor of hunger and relentless pursuit. "Rob, whatever we do next, it has to count," Melania said, her voice resolute amidst the chaos. "We'll head to the desert," I replied, the plan forming with each step. "We'll broadcast the truth to anyone who will listen. We have to share what we've learned." The desert's unforgiving expanse lay before us, a refuge and a crucible. As we set out, the vastness seemed to mock our smallness, our fragility. But within us burned the fire of revelation, the need to unveil the shadows that had choked the life from our planet. The undead, those pitiful echoes of humanity, were changing, but so were we. With every hardship, we grew more determined, more adept. The desert would not be our end, it would be our beginning, the forge upon which we would hammer out a future from the twisted wreckage of the past. The facility shrunk behind us, a monolith to human arrogance, as we stepped into the embrace of the open sky. The truth was ours now, a weapon against the darkness, and we would wield it with the strength of our convictions, come what may. Chapter 8, The Inferno's Edge. We navigated the labyrinth of stacked cars and barbed wire with caution, the ever-present moans of the undead a grim chorus to our stealthy advance. The cult's sentries, shrouded in tattered robes, were a grotesque mimicry of the monks of old, their eyes alight with the fervor of the damned. "Rob, we're not just fighting a man or his misguided followers," Melania whispered, her eyes scanning the makeshift watchtowers. "We're battling an ideology born from the chaos of our times." I nodded, my hand resting on the grip of my weapon, a tangible reminder of the reality we faced. "He's dangerous because he believes his own rhetoric, Laney. But we know the truth. The experiment, the devastation, it's man-made, not divine retribution." The compound was ahead, a mishmash of derelict buildings and fervent activity. At its center stood the scientist, his voice amplified, spewing vitriol and calling down doom upon those who refused to heed his call. "We have to confront him, expose the lies," I said, my commitment hardening like the earth beneath our feet. Melania nodded, her silhouette a pledge to the determination that had carried us this far. "And we'll need to be ready for anything. His followers see him as a prophet. They won't take kindly to dissent." As we approached, the crowd thickened, a mass of humanity lost to reason. We pushed through, our presence unnoticed in the thrall of the leader's sermon. "You," I called out, my voice slicing through the haze of indoctrination. "Your experiment doomed us all. You speak of cleansing, but you've brought nothing but death." The crowd's murmurs rose to a clamor, a sea of confusion as eyes turned to us. The leader's gaze found mine, a flash of recognition passing between us. "Ah, the skeptics," he intoned, a sneer twisting his lips. "You think you know the truth? We have proof," Melania interjected, her voice ringing with authority. "Your gravitational trials, the rotation catastrophe, the virus, all connected, all you're doing." A ripple of uncertainty passed through the crowd, the foundations of their belief shaken by her words. The leader's eyes darkened. "Lies! The undead are nature's response to our hubris, not mine." "We can show you the data," I insisted, holding out the drive that contained the truth. "This isn't divine, it's a disaster of our own making." For a moment, it seemed the tide would turn in our favor. Then, like a spark to tinder, violence erupted. The leader's voice rose to a fever pitch, inciting his followers to defend their sacred ground. Chaos ensued, a maelstrom of fists and fury. Melania and I fought back to back, our every move a dance of survival. The leader, consumed by his delusions, lunged at me with a fanatic's zeal. The struggle was fierce, but brief. With a final desperate effort, I turned the tide, and the leader fell, his reign of madness ended by his own folly. As the cult dissolved into disarray, Melania and I seized the moment, slipping away into the concealing embrace of the dusk. The compound, now a pyre to misguided conviction, faded into the distance as we fled. "We could have shown them the truth," Melania said, her voice tinged with regret. I grasped her hand, feeling the calluses of our toil and the warmth of shared purpose. "We will, Lonnie, but not to those lost to reason. We'll find others, survivors who cling to hope, not dogma." The Inferno's edge had been a crucible, a test of wills that had honed our resolve. With the cult leader's demise and our narrow escape, the path forward was clear. We would seek out a new beginning, a chance to rebuild from the ashes of a world consumed by its own fire. The truth would be our compass, guiding us through the remnants of a civilization that had learned too late the price of playing God. Chapter 9. A New Dawn. "It's fertile," she declared, cradling the earth in her palms. "Despite everything, the ground is ready to give life again." I looked out over our assembly of survivors, a ragtag group who had weathered the storm of the undead and the upheaval of a planet turned on its head. "We'll need to be vigilant," I reminded them. "The undead still lurk beyond the perimeters we've set. But we've got a chance here, a chance to build something that can last." Around us, the structures of our nascent community rose from the ashes of the old world. Makeshift shelters, repurposed technology, and a communal spirit bound by the necessity of cooperation. "Rob, we can't forget the past," a voice interjected from the crowd. It was Mike, his face lined with the scars of our shared trials. "The ones we've lost, they deserve to be remembered." Melania nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "We'll honor them with what we create here. A memorial, not just of names, but of spirit. They live on through us, through the life we choose to lead now." The air was filled with the hammering of nails, the murmur of voices, and the intermittent laughter of children, a sound that seemed a fragile miracle amidst the desolation. We were builders in a world that had known too much destruction. "Water will be the key," Melania continued, gesturing towards the newly dug wells. "We've got the means to collect rainwater, purify it. It's a system that can sustain us, make us independent of the old ways." I surveyed the network of pipes and catchments we'd engineered, a testament to human ingenuity in the face of adversity. "And energy," I added. "We've got solar panels salvaged from the before times. They'll give us light, heat, remind us that there's power in the sun's rays even now." Our conversations weaved the fabric of our future, threads of practicality and foresight intertwining to form a community that valued life in all its forms. As the day wore on, the center of our settlement took shape, a square of green where we planted not just crops, but hope. It was here we gathered as the sun completed its languid trek across the sky, marking the passage of time in a world that had forgotten its rhythm. We stand at the dawn of a new age. I address the gathered faces, each marked by loss but alight with the spark of survival. We've seen the worst of nature, the worst of ourselves. Now we embrace the challenge to be better, to forge a society that learns from the past and looks to the future. Melania stepped forward, her voice carrying the weight of our shared vision. We've been given a second chance, a rare gift. We won't squander it. We'll grow, adapt, and from the ashes, rise anew. The assembly erupted in a chorus of agreement, a sound that filled the twilight with a resonance more potent than any despair we'd known. We were no longer just survivors. We were pioneers on the frontier of a world reborn. As the stars emerged, bold and bright in the firmament, we lit a beamer in the heart of our settlement, a fire that signified our defiance, our hope, our commitment to life. It was a flame that would burn through the darkest nights, a signal to any who wandered in the shadow of the old world that here, on the cusp of the unknown, humanity still thrived. We had unveiled the truths of our cataclysm, faced the echoes of our follies, and now, at the edge of the inferno, we chose to step back, to build, to unleash the potential of a new dawn. The end. We thank you for experiencing Entropic Flesh alongside us. Let StoryWave.ai continue to weave stories from your imagination by supporting us with a like, share, and subscription. Join us for more narrative voyages daily. April 2024, till we meet again.